Hey there, popping in for the customary warning that we are not only going to spoil the shit out of 2017's It movie, but also we're going to talk about things that happen in the book itself and in the 1990 version of the story, I suppose, the TV movie. So if that's going to bum you out, take warning. If you're all in on this, cool. Welcome along. This is a real fun episode, I think. If you want to support us, go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and kick us a couple of bucks. Or if you want to talk us up on social media, especially as we're approaching a new season and a new book, that is a huge thing. I do searches and stuff like that, and I love it when people do it. So Twitter, blogs, any of those are really appreciated. I don't want to kill any more time. Let's talk about this movie. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King and related works. My name is Cole Ross, and I'm your host, and today I am joined by Bryan May.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, welcome back. And by Jeremy Greer.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, and we are here to talk about the 2017 It movie, along with the 1990 movie here in dribs and drabs. They're all based on the same work, and it's impossible to talk about one without talking about the other. But I'm very excited because, unlike the Dark Tower movie, I am here positive and jazzed to talk about a movie that I quite enjoyed. Not to give away the lead. How do you guys feel?
I feel like this movie is worse than the Dark Tower movie.
What?
No, I'm just kidding. This movie is really, really great.
I was going to say, like, we didn't convene about this ahead of time. I just kind of assumed that we all would like it. Brian, don't break my heart here.
Oh, no, actually, so I came into this not being a huge fan of either the 1990s miniseries or the book, really. But this is a really good movie.
Yeah. Cool. So you have history with both of those. It's been a while since we had you on the show, and I know Jeremy is kind of the consummate Stephen King reader, along with Autumn. I had no idea if you actually read the book, so you have history with the franchise. By the franchise, I mean it's one work.
Yeah, I got about so it feels like a franchise is I think the big thing. Like it sort of permeates the collective subconscious. I think I first even heard about the character of Pennywise. You guys know the really crappy skate punk band Pennywise?
Oh yeah, there was a Pennywise song in the arcade game where you rode around on the on like a fake skateboard.
Oh yeah,
to control it. Yeah.
So that's how I first learned about it. Like Pennywise the dancing clown as a character. So I always sort of had a passing interest in wanting to know what that was, because scary clowns. Like it's the formative, perhaps scary clown story.
For sure. I know that this probably inspired an awful lot of coulrophobia in a lot of people. Watching the television version when it aired on television. When it aired on television.
They broadcast this thing over the air. Like they just put it in people's homes for free. They didn't charge for it or anything. That is probably the most mind-boggling fact about the original 1990s TV movie to me. They just send it out. Like aliens from space are probably picking that up right now and going like, what the fuck? What are they doing?
There are little kids whose parents were like, oh, we probably shouldn't let Timmy watch this. They still picked it up on their fillings and are scarred to this day. So you weren't a fan of the original 1990 series. Can you expound on why?
So it's not like there's no knock against it. They did the best they could at the time with the budget and the technology, and Tim Curry owns the character. Like he's great in it. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think it was definitely a time and place kind of thing. And I just saw it so removed. I watched it in 2015.
Yeah.
It just didn't quite have the same effect, I think, watching it on an HD TV.
It's definitely different 25 years later, especially with that cast. When you have somebody like John Boy from the Waltons. I know, who's that? Is that the judge from Night Court? Oh, you bet it is. Like it was an all-star television cast at the time, but it definitely is a little cheesy outside of Tim Curry's performance, which transcends, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the book, again, I think the best thing I can say about the movie is it's making me go back and wonder, wait, why did I stop reading the book in the first place?
Because it's incredibly long.
It is incredibly long. It's definitely an expectations thing, I think. I just wasn't, for a 1,000-page book, I just wasn't, I mean, I guess I should have known there would be long, very long descriptions of the town and the things in the town. And
yeah,
I think I'm more in a place in my life where I could handle that.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeremy, how about you? I mean, did you read it right around the time it came out, or like what's your history with this particular piece of work?
I don't remember when it came out. I just remember reading it at an absurdly young age. So I like most of my, like I was reading Misery at an absurdly young age, like 13 or 14 years old. Just like The Dark Tower, that's kind of when I found all of Stephen King stuff and just consumed all of it. So this book terrified me. I was just to my core shook by this book. I've seen the movie. The movie was very scary as well. I watched that when I was pretty young. Me and Autumn watched the 1990s movie just recently, just a few weeks ago, but kind of just to brush up on it. I think maybe she had not seen it, so we're like, okay, we're gonna go see the new one, so we need to get the old one too. The new one is the old one is interesting and and like Brian said, like they did their best, they did their gosh darned best to bring this to broadcast television, and I'm really hopeful that guy's ponytail won like a daytime Emmy award, because if Tim Curry wasn't in the scene, that ponytail wasn't a scene, stealing everything. It was just ridiculous. I couldn't take my eyes away from it.
Yeah.
So I like the movie a lot. I also liked the book a lot. I haven't read the book in quite a long time. It's been interesting talking with the Duckfeed community, because I know Allison and Mai and some other people have been reading the book in the Radio Free Woodworld Slack channel, and just commenting on some stuff that I had forgotten, which is like that classic Stephen King writing, just extremely kind of gross stuff. Lots of weird stuff that they left out of the new movie, thankfully, like, forced sexual encounters and weird child sex and lots of, use of racial epitaphs and things like that. And I remember as a kid reading that and just kind of assuming like, oh, this is, I mean, I grew up in the South. Like, this is the way people are. Like, this must be how people are in Maine. Like, this is just like this is true to life. Stephen King is the narrator of our times.
Yeah, and if it's not that, like, oh, it's the 50s, and these are despicable people who are saying this anyway. And
but so I'm curious. I probably don't really have enough time in my schedule to go back and read it right now. But when we do it for the show, I'm definitely going to try to catch up to it. I'm going to be curious how it holds up to me. But I like all three of these adaptations, or I like the two movie adaptations, and I like the original book quite a bit.
Yeah. I reread, and by reread, I mean listened to the audiobook earlier this summer when I was getting real excited about the movie. And it's good. It holds up. I originally read it back in like 2011 or something like that. Hot on the heels of finishing The Dark Tower, actually. Because it is connected to the tower in specific ways that are not brought up in this movie particularly.
Because they really dodged a bullet there.
And we should also say this isn't going to be like a beat by beat summary, because we're kind of just going to talk in broad strokes about the way this works. A, because this is a good movie and you should go see it. And B, because we are going to be talking about the book, later on, I don't know, 2 years. But this is going to be kind of light and breezy and kind of a comparison between these two adaptations, probably, with a real emphasis on this kind of more recent movie. Watching the 1990s movie, I was struck by the ponytail. Bill's character looks perfectly normal from straight on, but from the side or from behind, it is really jarring. That does not look like a hairstyle that would exist at any point in time.
No. And if it did, Stephen King definitely rocked it at least once in his life.
Oh, I'm positive. Yeah. I was also struck by how faithful of an adaptation the TV series was. They took some liberties and they glossed over some things. Neither of these talk about my favorite part of the book, which is a real bummer. They both waste the Patrick Hockstetter stuff. However, the TV series in 3 hours covers a lot of the incident of the book and keeps the interleaved structure, which I think is something that makes that book what it is, because it is about the contrast between the way you were when you were young and the way you are when you grow up, and what you carry and what you transcend, etc. It's a book about growing up in a lot of ways. But they do flash back and forth, whereas this has this simplified structure where we are just seeing the story of the kids as they first encounter Pennywise the clown, this kind of cosmic entity that feeds on their fear and adapts to be the thing that they are most afraid of at the time. And it's controversial, I think, a little bit, to separate these two ideas and to say, hey, we're just going to show the kid story in chapter 1 and then do the adult side of this in chapter 2, which is going to happen because this movie was incredibly successful. So I'm going to throw it to you, Jeremy, because you do have the most history with this. What do you think of them separating this out and not running those stories in parallel?
I think it loses something from the book and the original adaptation, because you don't get that false sense of climax that the book gives you. Because in the book, you still have a lot of ground to cover after the kids deal with Pennywise and they go into the sewers. Like, you still have some things to do in the book, and that's missing from this adaptation. But honestly, like, I can totally see these guys making the sequel, and I guess they've already pre-announced they're like the kids are coming back in the sequel as well. So like, it's not going to be just the adults. And they've actually already addressed one of my complaints about the new movie. So, but I can totally see them doing like a Blu-ray director's cut where they cut these two movies together and just splice them in to make that. And I think that'd be a pretty interesting thing. I feel like this movie, if they had crammed adults in it, it would have been. That's 14 characters. That's 14 different actors. Plus the way that the city is structured, not to mention all of the bullies and things like that. I think it would have just been too much for a 2-hour movie, that, especially like this movie, which spends some time in its horror scenes. Like when the Pennywise is addressing these kids' fears, it's intense, and they kind of wade through that for a while, which I think is a good thing.
They settle in to those scenes.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like it was a good decision. I feel like that I don't think this movie would be as much of a success, especially after coming off of things like Stranger Things, where we've seen this kind of kids 80s focused horror thing be very successful. Like, I have to imagine that was a very deliberate decision on behalf of the movie, going like, okay, well, we got the kid from Stranger Things, we pretty much have the same plot that they took from us to begin with,
right? We're going to steal it back.
So let's just do it all over again. Let's steal it from them. So I think it was very successful in that way.
Wait, they have one of the kids from Stranger Things. Who is it?
Richie.
Oh,
Richie. Mm-hmm.
That's why he seemed familiar to me. Okay. Yeah.
Wow. You're the guy that doesn't know Clark Kent from Superman, Uncle.
It's been forever since I've seen Stranger Things, and if it seemed familiar at the time, then it was probably just because the concepts are, pretty similar, right? Stephen King loves writing stories about kids dealing with really difficult and awful situations like this. It can be seen as kind of this extension of Stand By Me or The Body, right? In a few ways, looking at the group dynamic of these little kids. I probably just brush it off as like, oh, so much else is similar between these two things that sure. Probably that. But okay.
I wasn't really calling you out. Like
I know.
I'm really actor blind, and like Autumn can see somebody for 2 seconds on the screen and be like, yeah, that was a guest star at Night Court in 1972, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How do you know that? But yeah, I really like Stranger Things, and I think that kid did an amazing job as Richie, so I picked it up. But don't feel like I'm calling you out.
No, I didn't feel honestly attacked. It was fine. Also, most kids look the same to me.
Kid blindness. I like it.
Kid blindness. Yeah. What was the complaint that they're going to address in the second movie? Just because you threw that off as an aside.
They said they're going to develop Mike into more of a character.
Oh, good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's great. And that makes some sense too, because Mike is he's a late addition in the kid's story a little bit. And he's more of a factor in the adult side of things as like the historian who is keeping everybody together too.
Once we get into the what we didn't like part of this podcast, I'll have some things to talk about with Mike.
Yes. Yeah. Brian, going to throw the same thing to you. Like, how did you feel about them, kind of like unleaving the two of these kind of
right.
sets?
Going into it, just like from a movie perspective, I get why, because they're going after the mass audiences. They're going after the people who have no idea what the book of it contains. So I understand how they think the best idea is to start from just a clean slate. These are some kids, nothing crazy's happened yet. Let's start from here. I don't know if my ideal version of the movie starts with the adults, but when I read the book, one of the most memorable scenes for me was, I don't even remember which character it was, but right at the beginning, somebody slits their wrist in a bathtub.
Oh, it's Stan.
And that's Stan.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense. That Stan is the one who kills himself. But like, I don't like, that felt like a really smart opening scene. Was that right at the beginning of the book? Like page 1?
I don't think it was page 1. I think page 1, it's been forever since I've listened to it. It's either the killing of Adrian Mellon or it's Georgie. It's
very early in the book, though.
Yeah.
And
it's one of the first scenes.
Yeah, and that set the tone for the book for me. And there's a version of the movie that has that at the beginning that I would love, but I don't know if it's necessary, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to set things up, maybe like it makes more sense once you know who Stan is as a character. And if you're not going to address why he would have grown up into being the adult that he is, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to begin with just this regular old middle-aged man dying in his own hand because of some horror. But you're right, it is a striking image. When I was watching the 1990s movie version of this, I was shocked at how late that scene takes place when Stan kills himself, because like in the flashback timeline, they are going into the sewers to have their first showdown with it before it's right around that time that they show him doing that, because he's the last person that they address. Yeah. I mean, it just makes me excited for the second movie, honestly, because there are a lot of themes that are not present here that I really enjoy about the adult side of the story, about the growing up side of the story, that I hope that they get a lot of time to explore. Specifically, the way each of these characters kind of transcended their upbringing, but were also indelibly marked by it, right? Kind of the adults that they turned into be. Also, my mind is already dancing with the casting on these. I have no solid ideas of who I would like to see, but that's going to be an exciting announcement at whatever Comic-Con they decide to do that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting. This director's floated an idea for who he wants to cast as an adult Bev.
As an adult Ben?
No, Bev.
Bev, okay. Who?
Who, the actress?
Yeah.
It was the have you guys, either of you, seen the director's previous movie Mama?
No.
Okay, it's the lead actress from that, though.
Okay.
Is that Jessica Chastain?
Yes. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Speaking of casting, it's super weird that they got a young actor to play Pennywise. At least to me. So let's talk about the new Pennywise. Bill Skarsgård, who they apparently kept from the kids. Like they tried not to show them what he looked like, what his costume and what his makeup were like, until it was time to film, so that their kind of reactions to his whole steez would be genuine and on the just kind of in the moment, right?
So since the comparison's inevitable with Tim Curry, I might as well bring this up now. So my understanding is that they used the exact opposite technique when they had Tim Curry as it, where he was constantly around, constantly in makeup, and constantly in character.
Oh, geez.
Oh, no, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, my understanding is the kids did not like it.
Well, yeah, I don't like it.
No.
And it's 27 years later, man.
Yeah. See, the thing that bothers me about the Tim Curry design is how bulbous his head is. Like, I know that that's intentional, but just like he got a lot of cranium going on. Yeah. And Bill Skarsgård kind of came out and directly said, like, nobody can do this the way that Tim Curry did it. So this can't be an imitation. This can't be, anything somebody would want to compare. And I think they do a pretty good job of steering clear of it.
Yeah, the best part about Skarsgård's performance, I think, is how he really sells the inhuman element of it. Mm-hmm. There's one of his first scenes, the boat scene with the sewer, like there's a moment where I can't remember if it's really in the exact middle of a sentence or what, but he sort of just loses his place and his eyes start floating apart.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unsettling.
The stuff that they do with his eyes, like the way even the socket will rotate sometimes, or the way they will have kind of an unnatural light to them. I want to see a making of feature about how they achieve that.
This is internet rumor level, and I didn't have time to check it out, but several people have told me that the actor Skarsgård can actually make his eyes go in different directions, so that some, if not all of that, was actually real. It was just him doing that with making his eyes go left
nice.
and right.
Yeah.
Again, it like court, like playground rumor kind of. There's
right.
You can play as Sonic in Mario or whatever kind of rumors, but.
I can believe it. Some of those are pretty realistic eye movements, and it's one of those things where if it's a practical effect of him just doing that, it just serves to make the CGI look all the better.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. When I was reading about this, that there is an alternate universe where Tilda Swinton plays Pennywise.
Oh yeah, she was in the running.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
that's interesting.
I'm here for Tilda, so I'm down.
I want to use the Rick and Morty gun to go over there and see how that played out, because I think that'd be really interesting. I don't know if it would have been better, but just who knows? It's counterfactual, but that would be a pretty out there choice, and I'd be down for that.
Were either of you familiar with Bill Skarsgård before this?
No,
I know him as a Skarsgård.
Yes, as one of the storied Skarsgårds.
So there's a show on Netflix that's it's just a dumb, there's werewolves and vampire shows, but for some reason it called Autumn and I's Imagination, and he plays one of the main characters on it, and does a very good job as like a weirdo kind of modern day take on a vampire. And so I was familiar with this dude, so when this was announced, I was like, man, that kid seems like too scrawny to do this. Like, he just seems like small. Like, he's just and too handsome. And I was completely blown away with his performance. I think he did an amazing job. Again, it's hard to lose the comparison with the thing that's in your mind from the book or the thing that's on the screen from Tim Curry. Cole, you mentioned that he came out ahead of this and said, I'm not going to live up to Tim Curry on this. I imagine people that sit at the dinner table in a restaurant after Tim Curry gets up and leaves says that same thing to the waiter. Like, hey, I just happen to sit here. I'm not going to be as good as Curry was.
Yeah.
But
nobody's heard from the guy who tried to replace him as Gabriel Knight. He pretty much disappeared right after that. You're seeing the last known footage of that actor.
I always just flash back to that scene of him in that Command & Conquer full motion video game where he's just saying this stuff and cracking up while he's saying it. It just makes me happy.
I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, that was I was just saying Skarsgård did an amazing job. I thought he was effectively terrifying in almost every single scene that they wanted to be terrifying in, and the CGI never really took me out of it, which is pretty impressive because that kind of stuff is, if you'll pardon the pun, very eye rolling for me. Like I'm getting to the point where if it's just CGI lathered on CGI lathered, and people are staring through characters or what have you, then I'm kind of just out of it a little bit. And this felt very interesting and weird and creative and good.
Yeah. There were not, many shots that made me think ugh, that looks fake. So that's the cost of doing business. But everything here seemed to be of a piece because they were willing to let this movie be dark, which is where CGI works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They made it take place at a later time. So this takes place in 1989 as opposed to 55 now is what it was in the book. Making it more and more Stranger Things and lacing the entire movie mostly with references to Ben Hanscom's obsession with NKOTB, the new kids on the block. That was so funny.
That gag worked for me. It was so
Same.
stupid.
Yeah. The one scene where they're all in Ben's bedroom and Beverly like closes the door and there's the big poster and he just silently like pleads with her, please don't, please don't, please. And she just like kind of just calmly doesn't say anything and just pushes it back so that nobody can see it is like just one of the best gags in the entire movie.
The soundtrack gag on that where she closes the door and then just immediately it blares up with an NKODB song.
That punchline works so well because the scene preceding it is so quiet compared to how loud that music is. It's so great.
It's such a serious moment too because they're going in there to like look at Ben's research. You know, he's a bookworm and he's got no friends because he's the new kid. And he's like looking at all this history of the horrible things that have happened in Derry. And then just all of a sudden you have this comedy bit laid in there. Like, this is a funny movie.
It is a funny movie, but the audience I was in like was laughing on a regular basis. Yeah. Even maybe laughing at some inappropriate stuff that we'll get into later, but that's kind of played as funny that probably shouldn't be. But yeah, I think the gags that they go after and I think they succeed with them largely.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I'm down with them updating this. It brings to mind though the fact that like if they make another one of these in 25 years or in 27 years or whatever, like it's not going to make any sense to have kids out on their own in the world. I'm not I'm not getting all participation trophies in here, but like 1989 is like toward the tail end of it being plausible for kids to be unattended for this long.
I was born in 1980. So I feel like I'm the old man on the podcast. So like my formative years, my early teenage years were like 93 and 94. Mm-hmm. And there was some of this, right? Like I would go out with my cousins and, you know, we'd go into the woods all day or whatever and go do whatever dudes do in the woods. Stephen King has the total wrong idea about that, by the way. But I totally agree. Like if I was doing that, which wasn't every single day, but if I was doing that and I didn't like check in with whoever was monitoring the children at that particular time, whether it was my mom or an aunt or whatever, like there would be hell to pay. Yeah. So I feel like 1989 is the cutoff. Like I feel like there's a cliff that you fall off and it starts becoming more of a, I don't want to say helicopter parenting, but like it definitely becomes parents start bringing their kids much more closer to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
for
like
good reason.
I was for sure. I was born in 1987, and to contrast that, I was not allowed to stand at the end of the checkout at the grocery store. I had to be by my mom while she was unloading groceries onto the belt. I could not stand down by the backs.
Oh wow! Okay.
You know, so there's a contrast there.
God, thank you, Unsolved Mysteries, for terrifying the parents of the world.
Yeah. Brian, I know you like music. Do you like the updated kind of like, oh, let's take the doo-wop kids and make them into punk kids angle of that?
It's weird. I don't know. I think it makes sense to move it forward because people aren't going to relate. People have a harder time relating to adult storylines if they're not in modern day, right? That's my theory. Mm-hmm. Or at least that's what the movie theater's thinking. Yeah. Not movie theater, movie company, Anyway.
Every single theater has a dial that sets sets the time for when the movie takes place.
It does make me wonder, are they going to do like a period piece gag for 2016?
You see that, like, didn't BoJack Horseman do one of those for like 2007 or something like that? Or I'm thinking of Community, aren't I?
Or like, what if they like tie in like Donald Trump's election to it? Like,
oh jeez. See, there can't be any horror anymore because it's all too real.
It's all too real. Too real.
Related to that updated time frame, something I'm really happy they did over the 1990 version is they brought back the parental neglect. These are not just losers because like people at school don't like them. They are losers because they come from kind of horrible circumstances. Richie aside, I suppose Richie's kind of got it okay. And there's only so much time that you can dedicate to this, but like they actually do show that like Bill's parents freeze him out. You've got Eddie's mom here in full force being, overbearing to an abusive degree. And kind of horribly they have Bev's dad on in full effect.
Yeah, Bev's dad is it's interesting what they do, because it kind of almost like by the time like the evil clown shows up and you're dealing with Bev possibly being raped by her father, which is the implication, I think, when they have their kind of their second or third scene towards the back of the movie. It takes the wind out of the sails for the clown scares for me a little bit, when this chick is actually like literally dealing with something very real and extremely emotional to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And again, that's coming from the books. If I remember correct, it's been a long time, so please correct me.
Yeah. It's very much a similar situation.
The movie leaves it very vague, at least.
And thank God for that.
Yeah.
Like we don't need the Hollywood take on that at all.
No,
absolutely.
The better part of taste is to leave it at menace.
But I'm with you that they nailed the relationships between the parents of these kids and the Losers Club.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think the movie succeeds on that a lot, even though it's they're almost hardly ever there. Like, we get that one scene with Bill's dad where he just yells at him that Georgie's dead and to put his hamster tubes back in place or whatever.
It's his little model of the sewers.
Yeah. But it works, right? Because we don't really see that dude for the rest of the movie, and it makes sense.
Yeah. He has a monologue at the end, like, hey, walking into the sewer is scarier for me, or, is not as scary for me as walking into my home, because, Georgie's ghost is there, whereas his killer is here.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that, which, at least that element is there. And I think that is so important for this, for this work, right? I don't know. Here's a question for both of you. Were you scared of this movie? Did it frighten you, or did it do something else? Brian, I'm going to put this to you.
So my answer is a pretty staunch no, but I also have a counterpoint of, does that matter? Like, so it is a Hollywood horror film, is my point. And it does follow to some certain kind of like scare tropes. People have been quick to point out there's a very a camera shutter effect when it does his running motion in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people point to that as like, oh, this movie's not scary at all. But
what a weird thing to focus on.
I know, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. Yeah. It's an effect. It's just a thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway. There were definitely scenes that I found very affecting, and I think for me, the horror that lies in it as an idea is way more of, I'm going to think about this movie after I'm out of the theater. I'm going to really think about, like, if I ever met it, what would it show me? Yeah. Do I want to know what it would show me? Like, there's an existential fear to this movie for me more than there is I'm scared while sitting and watching it.
Yeah, there's a paranoia to it, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, my summation would be kind of really close to yours. I wasn't really scared of this. There were scenes that definitely like either made me jump, or it's like, oh, that's fucked up. But like, it's paced like a comedy in that way, and I think a lot of very good horror is, where, if one joke doesn't land, the next one probably will. You know, like, it comes so fast and so heavy. Although you have this whole run of the movie, which is like this vignette of the kids getting their signature scares, right?
Yeah, and it's like we were talking on the Slack, it's a very horror house version of a horror movie, where you're kind of moving from room to room, idea to idea, at such a pace. Sometimes there's not a lot to linger on in the movie. And it's not like I don't feel like the movie was rushed, but there is a kind of frantic pace to it.
Mm-hmm. A lot of ideas, I think, is what we're feeling there. Is that they are moving between a lot of different kind of concepts, right?
Right.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'll put the same question to you. Like, did this spook you?
I'm gonna back up what Brian said and say not really. I think the individual scenes are constructed to be scary. Mm-hmm. And I think that if a young 13-year-old Jeremy watched this in the movie theater, he'd probably be hiding behind some stuff, hiding behind some hands, or maybe going to get a glass of water or something. But nowadays it's and that's one of my complaints with the movie is that I feel like it plays it very safe. It feels like it does these, as Brian mentioned, like horror movie tropes to the point where I'm like, okay, yeah, they're good. Like, I don't think it detracts from them. And like Brian said again, I don't think that necessarily has to scare me. But it didn't. Like, it just, I didn't feel that sense of dread. I didn't walk out like kind of feeling, spooked or what have you.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's good. Like, I feel like I felt that the kids were scared.
Yeah.
And that was more important than me being scared. And that's probably to do with the pacing a little bit. There's a lot of really like individual scenes that I like a lot, like the pyramid of balloons that Stan sees. Was it Stan? No, Eddie sees.
Yeah.
Like that's really good.
Oh yeah. I love those balloons. No, I agree with you, Jeremy. Man, the kids felt like they were terrified, and like you explored each of those fears individually, and those got to build to the point so that it didn't really matter that I wasn't scared, but I understood the connection between how those kids were feeling those fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something you said, Jeremy, unlocked something for me. The idea that the kids being scared, like in the book, the book has some, let's say things that are upsetting on a cosmic level. The idea that this is something that is forever and can, tailor itself to you and feeds off of your belief in it. Sets up these feedback loops. There are a lot of those ideas. But even in the book, each kid's individual scares, even though they were oftentimes pulled from Universal horror monster movies, it said something about them, right? Like their scenes and the way they dealt with them, it was character exposition more so than almost anything else. I mean, obviously the first intent is to, make you feel some form of terror or dread or any number of those things that, those synonyms for fear, right? But it does, show you something about the people who are important to the story. And for me, like these characters that I really have a lot of affection for.
The big example of that is one that's almost missing entirely from the movie, unfortunately, which is like Eddie's big fear of the mummy.
Ben's.
Ben's. And we do see a brief mummy appearance, and
yeah.
I'm kind of with a common voice on the internet that like mummies are really goofy nowadays. Like I didn't see that new Tom Cruise movie, but like I don't like it's a ridiculous concept now, but
yeah.
But it explains a lot about that character, and it's something that I feel like it gets right with a lot of them, but it doesn't quite nail that with Ben's and with some of the other kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. I agree.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the new Losers Club, who were introduced in this amazing intro sequence. Not the opening of the movie, but like that long protracted single shot of like them leaving school on the last day. As they're as the boys are, swearing at each other. And Bev is being tortured by her mean girls. Like in general, these kids do a really, really good job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The rapport between Richie and Eddie.
Well, add Stan in, because Stan is there rolling his eyes like all the time.
Yeah, Stan the straight man Stan, as I like to call him. Like the three of those people, and Bill is good too. Bill has a solid lead in this as well. But Richie and Eddie specifically were the two that just almost stole every scene. Richie is never not being a smartass, which is something that's carried over. In the books, he was a lot more goofy, right? And they kind of bring a little bit into this movie. But he's just steady being a smartass, and I love it so much.
Yeah,
it's so good.
I just wish he had maybe a few less sexually charged lines.
I'll show you a staph infection. It's so funny. I love Richie. Like I know Richie is a character who gets a lot of shit from people online for being annoying. Like even the super hammy version of him from the book or from the 1990s version. Like Richie's great. I've got a lot of affection for that asshole. But I can see what you're saying. Like I think your words when we were talking about this before were like he's so crass, right?
Yes, definitely.
Was your problem there just that it didn't feel realistic for a character of that age at that time, or was it just a matter of taste for you?
I think it was just he was so over the top with how far he went with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I get it. Like kids that age, they get these kind of ideas in their minds. But it was never quite my experience that, like, I never had a friend who would just say sexual things all the time. That feels weird to me. So
yeah. There's
it's like
there's a great Onion article recently that was like teenager or child trying out swearing for the first time is really overdoing it or something. Yeah. That's all I could think of when I watched this. Go ahead, Brett. I'm sorry I spoke over you.
So, but what I did like about Richie was how the other characters reacted to him, Stan and Eddie specifically. Eddie was the real star of the show for me.
Oh, yeah. Eddie's already great. Like, he's always been an MVP for me. But, like, in here, he has, like, I'm so sick and tired of this shit vibe to him. That is that is great for...
the scene where they're going into the sewer for the first time.
That's gray water, right?
What's gray water?
You're walking around the piss and shit of the entire town.
That's one of the that's because I don't know if you guys saw this, but they actually released that scene, I think, as a trailer or as a teaser for this movie. So I had already seen that going in. Yeah, and it was the perfect it was the perfect way to get me interested in this movie and not to think it was going to be a piece of crap whenever it was being teased, but also just makes me believe that, like, I never want to watch a trailer ever again. Just like give me a premise and like 10 seconds of like what the movie looks like maybe, and then just let me watch the film on my own. Because
I am all about a teaser. Give me a teaser, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah,
man.
Trailers would be so much better if you literally just got an uncut 30-second scene of the movie and then a title.
Yep.
Yeah,
like straight up.
Weirdly, this is a strange thing to bring up in a horror movie podcast, but the preview for Zootopia, that was the scene at the DMV.
That was perfect.
With the sloth.
Spot on. Made me want to watch that movie.
Yeah, I never saw it, but it made a very good impression on me.
It's a weird movie, Cole. Like,
yeah.
I recommend it, but because it's a
very
pretty easy
woke.
watch. It's woke in some really weird and not great ways, though. Like,
yeah, no, but
the metaphor, it's like the
commentary.
X-Men. Like the metaphor doesn't work out all the way.
Doesn't quite add up on both sides of that old equal sign.
No.
Yeah. Something that's great about this, just in general, talking about the Losers Club as a whole, before we get into some specifics and talk about their individual spooks and scares, a lot of their dialogue felt improvised to me. And I don't know if that was specifically Richie's actor kind of gearing that up, but like the way things were delivered when they weren't talking dramatically to each other, when they were just kind of providing this background din as they were moving from thing to thing, like it felt like them just having a shitload of fun together on the set. Am I alone in that?
I think they captured the relationship real well. I didn't get the feeling that this was improv at all. Like it felt way too targeted at the audience to be improv to me for a lot of it. I think going for that shock value that Brian was saying of like, like just leaning into the vulgarity because these are kids in the 80s. Like, oh, hey, we can say this and it'll be forgiven kind of thing.
Right.
Because they're all kids.
I could believe there was some looseness in the script for like spontaneity. I don't know. I want to see the making of documentary now.
Yeah.
Stop making me want to see making of documentaries. I'll never watch them.
Right. I don't want to buy a Blu-ray. Come on.
I am curious to see like at what level, how much freedom did these kids have in their acting choices? Because kid actors vary greatly in quality.
Yeah. Even within this movie.
Yeah. And so you just never know. Like some of them could be like hardcore professionals. Like I could believe Bev, whoever played Bev, is like she's seemed older, so I don't know. She's got chops.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know. Does the kid who played let's say does the kid who played Mike study his lines all day? Like I have no idea.
Yeah. I don't know. We need answers. Let's talk about some of these individual kids and rate their performance completely harshly. No,
what scale are we using?
What's that?
Just like one clown, two clowns.
I don't know. I don't have a way to plus one that joke. I just want to talk about these kids.
Go for it.
Just a warning. I went to go look at the IMDb page for this movie so I could figure out what Beverly's actress's name was. And if you just search the movie Pennywise is just like it becomes a whole theme of IMDb. Like Pennywise is just there, and it's like You'll Float 2, 2017,
wow.
And I'm like,
Great.
oh shit!
It's a whole it's a whole takeover.
IMDb's marketing has gotten pretty crazy in the last few years.
Did your movie theaters have red balloons up?
No, and I went on a Thursday night. I felt a little bit ripped off.
We went on this Sunday, this past Sunday, and they've opened up a bar for some reason at the movie theater, so you can go get extraordinarily overpriced alcohol if you want to. And so we did. And
it's a good scam, yeah.
It's a good scam because it works. But they had a balloon tied up, and I asked the bartender, and she said, "Yeah, they were up all over the place, but we got so many complaints that we had to take them down. This is like the last one left."
So many complaints. Were people freaked out, or were they just annoyed?
I guess I don't know. Either one. I find it very annoying more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I went to a cheap theater. Did you guys do the super package? I don't even know what they call it anymore. Cinemark HD or something?
I did like the Cinemark XD, not because I wanted more pixels on my screen, but because that was the 7:00 showing, and I didn't feel like, fuck going to a movie at 8:40. Come on.
Fair.
I have to drive an hour away to start getting any weird acronyms after my movie experiences. Right. So, at my local theater, it's just like, hey, we haven't been shot up in a little while. That's good.
Cool. Thumbs up. Yeah. No, like our theater has those weird like reclining seats, like the electric recliners that I can see just being completely busted in 2 years, and they have no lumbar support, so you're sitting up on the edge the whole time. Yeah,
absolutely. I used to work at a theater that had those things. Ew. Yeah, they broke all the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
It's a nice idea. Emphasis on idea. So Bill is kind of designed to be uninteresting, I think. A little bit. His actor is doing an awful lot of, like, let's say, yeoman's work, I think, to kind of hold things together, no matter if it's this adaptation of the 1990s one. But
so I have a theory, and you can confirm or deny since you've read the book. But I think Bill's character specifically doesn't translate too well to a visual medium. There's not a lot of room for internal trains of thought.
I don't think that I can't recall an awful lot of internal monologue that is given about Bill in the book.
So it's really just you get the same kind of like stuttery lines in the book as well?
Yeah.
Well, you
get a lot more interaction with that bicycle.
Yes, you do. Get a lot more silver. And I heard some people talking about, like, it doesn't make sense that he would be referencing the Lone Ranger in 1989. That didn't bother me because I figured it was his dad's bike. Like, that's an old style bike too.
Well, I mean, Richie has also seen us playing a Street Fighter game that wasn't technically out in 1989.
That might have been Street Fighter 1 though.
I try not to think about anachronisms like that.
Yeah. I don't try to worry about it.
Wasn't Street Fighter 1 called something like Fight Street in America?
I don't know.
God, I hope so. And if not, I am Googling the copyright on Fight Street right now because I have found a new podcast name.
Fight Street. The original Street Fighter was in 87, and that is the game that he was playing.
Okay.
On there. Yeah. So, yeah, it was here. It was released on PC Engine and TurboGrafx CD under the name Fighting Street.
There we go.
Yeah. But the arcade version, I believe, was still Street Fighter, which is nice. I'll always be a sucker for a video game and a movie. But yeah, like, Bill's signature scare is just his brother Georgie keeps popping up all over the place. Georgie being, that kind of being the opening tragedy of this movie, which is him, getting his arm ripped off, reaching into the sewer. Like, it's an iconic scene. That kid who plays Georgie is great.
Yes.
When he's in the basement doing the constant litany of "You'll float too, you'll float too." Yeah, that was in the trailer, and that was not diminished whatsoever for exposure.
And his final scene too was great. Mm-hmm. Okay, no, go Jeremy.
Oh no, I was going to make a dumb joke that kid has 3 first names, so you definitely can't trust him, and he would probably make you float if he had an opportunity.
Watch out in the future.
I thought just while we're talking about Georgia real quick, but I thought it was a particularly gruesome scene with the kid running or just trying to crawl away with his arm missing. Like I was really surprised they leaned all the way into that at the very beginning of the movie. But like I know we have an R rating and it's it's a modern day movie, but I was like, damn, can they show this on television?
It's upsetting. As I get older, I get more and more uncomfortable seeing bad things happen to kids. Not that I was like super crazy about it 5 years ago or whatever, but like it's pretty. It was shocking to see it happen to a kid who couldn't have been more than 5.
My dad said that he stopped reading Stephen King because it felt like in every single Stephen King book he was killing, murdering, or maiming children, and he's like, I have kids. Like I just don't want to read about that. There's other stuff in the world to read. So now he's a huge Game of Thrones fan. So weird.
Well, people change.
I do think Bill is kind of boring in this. But I don't know what you could really do with Bill's character because Bill is an extremely boring guy.
He's Leonardo.
He's a very narrative focused character. Like there's no real room. They just didn't give him anything to develop on because they have the main plot for him. So why give him more?
Yeah,
there's other things to focus on.
Yeah, he's straight and true. Yeah. Beverly's great. I really enjoy her character, her depiction. That actress does a very good job. You're right that it's kind of, it is a little strange how much older she looks than everybody else.
I think there's a note down later here about the creepy pharmacist scene.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they specifically did it to make that like just a little more plausible than her just being like a what are they supposed to be, like 13?
I think 13, so they can be. It's 13 in this one. It's every 27 years, like it is in the book, so they can be 40 when they come back. So yeah,
that it just seems a little old. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't spend a lot of time with 13-year-old girls anymore, but that didn't seem like 13 to me.
No, that was something that Autumn specifically told me to mention on this podcast. Is that Beverly seeming not just in maturity, right? Like it, because you expect girls to be a little bit more mature than boys, but also just in straight up age. It makes this stuff between her and Ben seem just not weird, but just wildly like not gonna happen, dude.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Ben in particular, like we're not to him in the list yet, but it bears saying he looks like 4 years younger than everybody else. I don't know if it's because of the way. Like I don't want to make fun of the way the kid looks. He appears to be out of place. What's that you said?
He's adorable.
Oh, he's great.
He is.
Mm-hmm. He's a very charismatic actor. Just his juxtaposition with Beverly is kind of kind of strange. I love that they went back to Beverly being a little bit more rough edged in this than she was in the 1990s version. Watching that and seeing her be just like a little bit too proper and nice didn't line up at all with her depiction in the book. So her being like not quite punk, she doesn't have like spiked bracelets on or anything like that,
right?
But especially after she cuts her hair, in the usual tragic scene of somebody cutting their hair because of trauma, her togetherness and assertiveness is really great, in a way that I think they flush down the fucking toilet at the end of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a little bit, just a little.
We'll get there, though.
I have opinions.
Yeah. That sink scene, though, that was a scene that got me.
Yeah. That was horrifying. Yeah. The idea specifically of like your bodily waste, everyone's bodily waste coming back and attacking you. That's awful.
Yes. Awful. Yeah. It's terrifying.
I hate it when my sink backs up. I'm a hairy boy, and I deal with that on a pretty regular basis. I didn't expect the entire room to be covered. Like that is something out of like a K horror movie. How much blood there was in this version of this. Oh
yeah, that's a very like East Asian kind of horror trope. Yeah. I love it. It was so surprising, really. Like nothing about the scene right until that moment leads you to think there's just going to be blood everywhere.
Yeah,
and it's a fantastic surprise.
Yeah, and when you go into this knowing the story, you think, okay, there's going to be some blood. Oh, that's a lot of blood. Oh, let's stack on top of that huge tendrils of hair grabbing her and trying to drag her into the drain.
God, yeah. Not cool.
And then it all good.
her dad coming in and just like, what's wrong?
If it was a spider, you should have told me. I worry sometimes. And then capping all of that
There's
off.
also-
Oh, go ahead.
Just talking about that scene for a little bit. There's also like the double tension that they do in this scene, because she still has the love letter from Ben with the
right.
January Embers line on it, and
yeah.
it's they make sure to frame it in almost every shot where he's interacting with her, so that you're you're constantly worried that he's going to find it. But they bury that so far down later into the movie that it really surprised me. Like, here's all this blood stuff, and then like I was positive that he was going to pick up that card and start freaking out. While covered with blood, and while she's covered with blood, and it would just be even more terrifying. But they I think wisely like wait for that to happen until later in the movie. I just thought that was a really because they definitely put it like square in the middle of the damn scene of the shot, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Alvin's too bright.
No, well, he's too busy worrying for studying.
Yeah, yeah. It takes up a lot of time and attention. And then capping her whole bloody bathroom scene off with an 80s cleanup montage. I was laughing. I was almost in tears watching this scene.
That's maybe my favorite, like, trying to be funny gag in the movie. Right. There's another quote unquote gag that I think is better, but it's not necessarily for humor.
Yeah. What is that? Just while we're here, so I don't forget.
So the final Pennywise scene, where like Bev, maybe not final, but Bev is watching his show unfold down in the sewers. Is just his ridiculous dance as the camera's like zooming in on him.
It looks like a Danganronpa cutscene. Oh man, we've already sang Eddie's praises. I love the character of Eddie as the hypochondriac, and his harder edge here is like just increased bitterness. His dude is the leper who's chasing him from Neibold Street, just saying "time to take your medicine" and sticking out his tongue with the pill on the end. Yeah.
I also think we get a lot of Eddie's stuff when they go to the house. And I just want to say that this movie did the weird, possessed house thing just infinitely better than the Dark Tower did. I just want to call it. It's just it's a weird coincidence that they both have those scenes, even though they go in two different directions. But wow, this one feels way like you could feel like I actually felt like, oh God, Eddie could die. Like maybe they're gonna pull it. They're gonna trick us somehow. Like the kid laying there with the broken arm, all being floppy, and then Pennywise, coming out of that refrigerator is yeah.
If you didn't make that comparison, I would have. And it's even weirder, not just that these movies came out about a month apart from each other, but those houses are related. They are both, demon haunted places, united by their creepy elf wallpaper and stuff. Like it's there. And yes, they do it much, much better. This has an amazing haunted house in it. That arm break was one of the most like stomach churning things in the movie, specifically because of how floppy he got.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Honestly, can we just call out the entire haunted house sequence? I just love it. That's a really solid 10 minutes of that movie.
Yeah, we ought to, because that serves as a climax in a lot of ways. Like it's it sets up the the act two, everybody's mad at each other kind of break before they all gather back together. But we should talk about the house on Neibold Street a little bit, like starting up by giving Richie an actual fear because he doesn't really have one. Seeing his own wanted poster, all the way up to the doors, the not very scary at all, scary and really fucking scary, or whatever it was.
What's behind the other doors?
Yeah,
it's a testament that when they showed that scene with the three doors, like the audience I was in, like literally all started laughing out loud at it, like in a time of terror, they've ramped up the tension and they're separating these kids, and it shows that, and like everyone just starts cracking up laughing. Like that's a great movie that can make you swing that fast in emotions, I think.
Yeah, well, it just means that it's holding on tight, right? You're not lagging behind and feeling any kind of whiplash. Like you're right there with it, on top of it. Yeah. Any other details from the Neibold kind of scenes that we want to call out? Because like Eddie falling through the floor, kind of devastating, him breaking his arm. All of that is pretty good.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to just that special shout out for that scene. Probably my favorite scene just in total in the movie.
Yeah. It is an incredibly good sequence. Ben, we've already alluded to, so he's the overweight kid. He looks a lot younger than everybody else. He feels kind of inert in this in a weird way to me. Like, he doesn't get a lot to do aside from being kind of an info dump.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating. Because
what is he in the book?
In the book, he's like the tough kid almost. He's real sensitive and real earnest, which they capture here. It just feels like he's more active. Like he has this role, like this establishing moment of them, being in the Barrens and like him helping them build a dam. Like there is more competence to him than just kind of being somebody who read this stuff about the town, right?
So he was just like the resourceful one.
Yeah, I think that makes a certain amount of sense. And I don't know how much of this I'm bringing the idea of the adult Ben, who's a real badass as well. Back into this, like even in the movie, like John Ritter sticks out because like, oh, he is the person who I recognize the most out of this. But his portrayal of that character is actually really good, I think. Yeah, who knows? It just feels like Ben was kind of like there for a handful of scenes and then faded into the background. Jeremy, it sounded like you agreed with that.
Well, sort of. I can't really talk about Ben without also bringing Mike into it.
Go for it.
Because in the books, Mike is the info dump character. He's the one that has put together this history of the town to show that, like, oh, he's the one that finds this photo album with, the pictures of pictures of Pennywise or whatever. He's the one that puts together the 27 years thing. And it makes sense because when you go to the adults, he's the one that stayed behind. He's the one that remembered, and he's the one that brings them all back.
He's literally the librarian.
He's the librarian, yeah. They pull that from Mike and kind of hand it all to Ben. So Ben is that info dump. And you get this weird thing where, like, we talked about how great the scene in Ben's bedroom is with the New Kids on the Block poster, and that remains great. But the idea of this 13-year-old kid hanging up these black and white photographs of like a town that he's lived in for 5 minutes, it seemed a little. And again, like the kids have to learn this stuff somehow. I get that they probably wanted to pull this from Mike and give it to Ben because Mike is introduced so late into the movie. They wanted the kids to understand more what's going on and build that tension up, and to have it make sense and to have them talking about Pennywise and to talk about their experiences. But it feels like it leaves Mike with nothing to do more than it leaves Ben with nothing to do. I kind of agree that Ben is extremely ineffectual in all of this. Like, he doesn't really seem like he's doing much. But at the same time, we get this lengthy scene at the beginning with Mike and having to kill this, innocent animal. I forget if it was a lamb or it
was like a sheep or something. Like he was using an Anton Chigurh gun.
Yeah. And we get this lengthy, like, and that's supposed to build up Mike's character, but then we don't even see him for what feels like a good 30 or 45 minutes. And by the time that
there's the brief scene with him in the alley delivering the meat. And we see, he's actually at the first of the kind of signature scares where we see the burned hands kind of reaching out,
reaching
from
through
the
that
door.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this has to do with the math problem of you have a 2 hour and something. This is not a short movie. So, and they have
especially
7
for a horror
kids
movie.
to balance. Yeah, not short for a horror movie. And they have 7 kids to balance. And there's a certain point where they have to say, hey, does this kid have too much to do in the script? And does this kid have not too much to do? And I guarantee you there was a version of the script where Ben was not the historian guy, and they realized if we don't give him this angle, then he really just feels tacked on. But they have to move things around, and I don't know. I'm sure there were a lot of arguments, and I'm sure there were a lot of different versions where they said, well, what if we give this kid this and this kid this? And this is just the equation that they landed on for the best version of the script they had.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, completely excuses it. I do think it's kind of weird. I didn't even think about the fact that Ben literally just moved to Derry and like, oh, I know more than anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
You all can't see it because you've been here your whole lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also weird because they you know, in other versions of this story, they share similar roles. They're both particularly bedeviled by Henry Bowers, like Ben because he got Bowers in trouble and landed him in summer school, etc., and down the line, and also because he's a fat kid, so you know he's obviously going to be victimized for that. But also, like Mike, you know, he's a black kid, and he has a particular amount of hatred lobbed to him just for that, because Henry is a reprehensible character, whose dad is also reprehensible, and he has been raised to believe that, you know, his family is only poor, not just because, you know, not because of, you know, Henry's dad's drinking or whatever, but because of things that Mike's dad did. You know, that's an angle that is explored in the book that isn't really explored here. But you have two characters who share an awful lot of aspects. They're both kind of studious, and they are both victimized by Henry Bowers. They're just occupying a lot of the same space. They differentiate themselves in adulthood, but I can see that like divvying of story action being fraught, right? And it sucks because what we are left with is Mike kind of just being a victim.
Yeah,
he gets the kill. Like he gets to finally deal with Henry at the end, which is,
and you know what?
Which is good.
That's specifically the metaphor they use is about Mike. Are you going to be the victim? Are you going to be the hunter? Are you going to be the prey?
Mm-hmm.
That's very weird.
Yeah,
like they specifically outline it and highlight it.
Yeah, it's like the opening. Like aside from Georgie, it's the opening of the movie. Yeah. But Mike is particularly afraid because in this version, his parents died in a house fire that would have, I believe, it was set by, it was set by Henry's dad. They might go into that later on. Ben, like we mentioned, he doesn't have his mummy, so like he has a scene in the library where one of the kids who was killed in the ironworks explosion chases after him with no head. But like again, he is pretty inert in the story, aside from, you know, casting eyes at Beverly. Yeah,
his scare was felt lackluster to me. Didn't quite have the same landing the other kids' did.
No. Richie, I like Richie a lot. I don't know if I have if I feel a kinship being a talker or what have you. But his portrayal in this was great. We've already laid a lot of praise on him. He's remarkable because in this they decided, like in the book, like he never saw the monster until everybody else mentioned the monster. Is the thing. That was true in the book, and that is true here. Here, his actual fear is clowns. Like they ask him, "Hey, what are you afraid of?" Like, "Oh, clowns." You're not going to believe it.
So the scene where they reveal that is with the projector, right?
I forget. Like I think they're sitting outside or something like that. Maybe.
I could have sworn it was the projector the projector scene where they're flicking through the images.
It was after that, or it was shortly after. Maybe I can't remember. I watched it a little bit earlier today, but
oh, I get you.
Yeah, I can't remember the specifics of it. This movie moves quite quickly, so it's hard to get the actual order down.
I remember the clown line coming from like around the time that they were discussing the first time that they saw it, but also I don't remember 100% for sure. So
yeah.
I had something else I was going to say about Richie, and it's just totally flown my mind. That's great. Awesome. Somebody please talk. Get me out of this trap.
Yeah, Richie's just along for the ride. You know.
He's a flavor character. He's the one they use to spice up scenes.
Yeah. And that's true to his role in the book too. Like in the book, and I think in the 1990s one as well, like he's afraid of the Wolfman, but he doesn't see the Wolfman until everybody else talks about the monster. Because they all saw, like, I was a teenage werewolf or something like that. Yeah. Stan is really funny. And I do not remember Stan being funny in any other adaptation. Stan's like a tight ass. Like his whole thing is that he views the world as this rigid and orderly thing. Like it was kind of a groaner in the TV movie version. He uses the phrase, "That's not empirically possible," like 5 times.
Copy, paste, copy.
but Stan is definitely among these people the one who would be the most likely to straighten crooked pictures in a hotel room.
Stan's great. Like, I love his scare. His scare's weird, and they use it as a motif, which I think is great.
Yeah.
They're all motifs, but specifically his is visually very distinct from everybody else's because it's a piece of art of a woman playing a flute.
Yeah.
And
it's like an abstract. It's based on an actual artist whose name I didn't make a note of when I was reading about this. But think like a Edvard Munch kind of humanoid drawing, but it's a woman playing a flute. She comes to life in this really like most of the brushstrokes and stuff are represented as weird ripples on her skin. She's very tall and lanky and looms over. That one shot where he like looks at the painting and it's empty is amazing.
Oh yes.
Love that.
I don't want to be that guy, but to bring up Dark Souls, but this guy, the flute player, really reminded me of the I think you call them the Gudents in Bloodborne, the gooified students from the lecture hall.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, like it's the weird offset eyes, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the overall like kind of stretchiness and like thin, lanky thing. So yeah, sorry, I got to play to form.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We're typecast. Don't worry.
So we talked about CGI. This is maybe the one effect. Like the monster of Stan's story is like noticeably CGI, and it's fine because it's supposed to look like a work of art. But it was like the one moment in the movie where I was like, it doesn't like. I don't know if it's the lighting or what would have like made it a little more palatable to my eyes, but it just felt a little off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody will probably say it's intentional, either affiliated with the movie or somebody's defending it. I thought it was the same. Like, darkness and shadow cover a lot of sins. Like, it didn't bug me too much because I liked the idea. If I like the idea enough, I'm going to extend a lot of leeway. That is bad criticism, but that's kind of where I'm at.
The visual of it, the idea of it, the theme of it was greater than the whole of it looking weird to me.
Yeah. Weirdly, so Stan in the book is Jewish, but he is not practicing. Here, like, he is full on practicing. He's not just secular, which is kind of a turn for his character because in the book it was kind of a way to make Henry Bowers seem even more hateful. Was like, oh, he was picking on him for this, even though it was like not really a part of his identity at all. Whereas, here it actually is. Who knows what the calculus was that went into that, but like Henry throws his yarmulke like it's a frisbee.
Yeah, but they don't even like he says like some racist stuff to Mike, but he never says anything like racist to Stan. It never seems like anything more than I've got your hat,
Yeah.
That's what I picked up out of it too. Like they went to the trouble of having the overbearing rabbi dad that how's it going to look if you don't get your bar mitzvah right or what have you. But then they don't really do a lot with that.
No.
Which seems kind of weird. I guess it was all an excuse to get to that painting, but I feel like they could have put that painting in the library also. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already read one or two negative think pieces about how Stan was handled. So people are they're talking about Stan.
Yeah. It's I'm not conversant enough in the issues surrounding the depictions of Judaism in media. So it's hard for me to say anything especially insightful about it. So I'll back off. Speaking of Henry Bowers being a little shit, let's talk about their whole gang. Henry's fine. His whole mullet angle feels like it is appropriate. And then listening to Anthrax is pretty good as well.
With wearing the Anthrax shirt and everything. It's so stereotypical and it's comical at this point, right? Because I've seen that be just typecast as a villain character so much in these weird movies, but it's just it almost seems quaint.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm going after.
Can I just make a quick aside about Anthrax?
Of course you can.
Okay, so there's four bands considered the fathers of thrash metal. It's Metallica, Iron Maiden, Megadeth, and Anthrax. I feel like I got Iron Maiden wrong, but there's 4 of them. But the point is, there was several concerts they did together, and if you ever watch those DVDs, Anthrax is by far the broiest, sloppiest band out of all of them.
Yeah, like I associate Megadeth and particularly Iron Maiden with being far more Baroque than Anthrax are.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot more thought into the other bands. And like even Metallica, like they're much more constructed. Anyway, so I'm just saying, typical jock music.
Right.
I love heavy music, guys, and it's a bummer when things like that happen. That's all I'm saying.
when your particular kind of music that you enjoy is used as shorthand for character development.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm really bummed out that they messed up Patrick again. Like, at least they showed him, as opposed to the 1990s movie, which didn't have a Patrick Hockstetter character. Here, he's just like a lanky dude who really enjoys making flamethrowers out of spray cans. Like, and he dies super early. In the books, he's responsible for one of my favorite chapters of horror fiction. Outside of the chapter in the extended version of The Stand, which is the No Great Loss chapter. The point of view chapter that's talking about him kind of like growing up being a psychopath, like killing his little brother in the crib when he was only like 3, and him just kind of looking at his own particular style of not understanding that other people are real, his solipsism, and particularly his death with his fridge and the weird little wasps, the fleshy wasps that fly up and kill him. Like, I love that so goddamn much. It's so good. And like, I haven't seen it in a movie. And like, we're just not going to get it. Like,
especially because his death was just kind of boring in this adaptation in the new movie. Like, it's just like
he just disappears while they're hunting for Ben in the sewer. Yeah.
Felt like they filmed an extra episode of The Walking Dead and were like, hey, you guys want to use this?
Yeah. Also, I mean, I can't wait 2 years to say this. I love that it can't feed on a psychopath because the psychopath can't feel emotions and therefore can't feel fear.
Mm-hmm.
So it just has to kill him without actually eating him. It's so good.
Okay,
man.
You're making me want to go back and read this book.
Okay.
Amendum. It wasn't Iron Maiden. It was Slayer.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, Iron Maiden feels a little bit too hair for that crowd to me to be considered thrash.
Yeah, I just had a brain fart. I couldn't remember.
No, it's perfectly fine. I'm happy you corrected so we didn't get tweets. So we've talked about some of these scenes, and I want you guys to bring your own if you have them. But there are some things that kind of stick out over the course of this that I think they kind of nailed, or if there are places where you think they really fucked up, we can talk about those as well. I want to start us off here. It's a little ways in, but that rock fight.
Yeah, I didn't. This is a big coming together moment for the kids, as when it happens in the 90s adaptation, or in the original movie adaptation, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And I vaguely remember it being similar in the books. And this brings up one of my complaints about this, is that something that is in the book and in the TV adaptation is the Barons are the Barons, and they're kind of absent in all of this. Like, you just don't get a lot of like the kids spending a lot of time in there. Like, I don't know. Like, it's such a huge thing in the books. Like, that's where they spend all of their time kind of bonding. And here it just felt like they were either at different parts or just like kind of in the city, like hanging out on the street talking or what have you. Because that was like going into that rock fight is a huge thing. It's like them taking back territory from Henry and his gang. So, but here it just feels like it was just like a skirmish almost. It felt cool. Like the kids coming out, especially Eddie coming out like in front of everybody and getting all aggro on him felt great. Like it was cool. I can't help but like look at or remember the book or the adaptation and think like, well. Yeah,
the Barons was a huge part of that. It was specifically their place to get away from everybody, even if they were ankle deep in everybody's shit and piss. Brian, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Well, as a movie viewer, I'll say, like, I felt very confused about like what was considered the Barons. It felt like a name they had for a thing that they didn't really define super well just in the framework of the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt like just a name to me, but it was just the sewer system. That was the Barons.
Yeah, it's called out in the books It's called out in the book that like it makes no
doing that too.
Yeah, because we're used to talking about the Dark Tower, you know.
Yeah,
it's called out in the book that that it makes no sense that it's called the Barrens because of how lush it is, but like it is one of those little kid nicknames for a place, you know. Which I love those. I love those little nods to the way kids, you know, think and talk to each other. But yeah, that shows that there is some kind of failure, that the Barrens is not properly identified, because like having read the book, I've got a lot of affection for that kind of untamed wilderness that they claimed as their own, where they could actually like be themselves with each other.
And that's something that Stephen King really specifically excels at, is building that sense of place and time around his characters. Like, he's great at character work, and he's fantastic at building. I'll always go back to Needful Things as one of my favorite Stephen King books, and just coming out of Needful Things, you just know Castle Rock through and through, and you know the characters that you were reading about. And that's something I think that this movie is missing a little bit. And again, you've got 2 hours and some change. You've got 7 characters plus a clown, plus an evil villain in their gang, and you know some shitty parents that you got to build in. Like there's limited time to really develop a sense of place in this movie. But still, like it's one of the things that I miss the most. Yeah.
Yeah. The what you get is, oh, did you know more people die in Derry? Did you know more kids die? Did you know more people go missing, etc.? Like, hey, there's something weird about this place. Okay, well, we're gonna see why. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, stop me as I go through these scenes, because we're looking at my notes here. When they are comparing their notes and like looking for the place where it might be in the sewers, and they've got the projector up.
Yes, the projector scene. We mentioned this in passing earlier. Yeah. So this scene is really neat. This scare gave me more of I was more delighted by it than I was terrified.
Yeah.
They start flicking through some images, and then suddenly the projector starts controlling itself, going through images. I don't even remember what's the big picture of it. It's just Derry somewhere, right?
Yeah, like they're
Georgie. It's a picture of Georgie, right?
Yeah, like they're initially overlaying a map of the Derry like sewer system, or like one of the old maps of like Derry Township from way back. But then it starts going through the carousel to like family pictures of Georgie, right?
Yeah.
And it starts zooming in on a background feature, and they're like, "Oh no, is that Pennywise?" And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and suddenly Pennywise is the size of the projector screen, and then Pennywise is physically there, the size of the projector screen.
He starts climbing out of the screen. Oh my god, this is so good.
I'm kind of with you, Brian. I was like watching this. I was just delighted. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so great! This is so much fun." I'm sure these kids aren't thinking that at all.
See, child me wouldn't have handled that okay, but adult me is totally fine with it.
Yeah, well, like adult me is delighted at the inventiveness of that. That like, a photograph of Pennywise and him kind of reaching out at that would be, that's not very scary. He's like the size of an army man or something like that. No. Here, when he's blown up to the size of the wall, and like if he's crawling out, and if he stood up, he would break the roof off the place. Like, that is a cool and inventive idea.
yeah, that's really great.
Yeah. This scene has I have a nitpick with it.
Okay.
And it's one of those things that like in the moment I didn't care, but like, you think about it later and you're like, so this scene implies they end the threat by opening the garage door and letting light into the garage door, negating the power of the projector, I presume.
Right.
But every other scene implies the creature, has some sort of physical form that he manifests as. Because like there are scenes where they attack him and he retreats, but we see him retreat physically down holes and wells.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. This scene feels like it calls into question: does he always have a physical form? Like, what's up?
I don't know. I would have to go and take inventory. Like, I just kind of like glossed over this by saying like, oh, he didn't have to take a physical form here because he was just trying to freak them out. I don't think he was trying to kill them at that point, especially because they were all together.
I mean, it's fair. I guess like you don't actually know within the boundaries of this movie what his exact power set is. You can infer a lot, and you kind of know because going into it, you know a lot, but just within the bounds of the movie, you just kind of get hints rather than strict definitions.
Yeah. It's super important in the book that he has a physical form, that he presents it to one person as what they see, that they can lock him into that form and its weaknesses by sharing what they see. So when he comes at them as a werewolf, they have to say, okay, he's a werewolf, and everybody starts seeing him as that. He gets locked in, cannot change, and he's weak to the silver slug. But I don't know that's the role here. And there's like a little bit of that, like, hey, belief is what ultimately kills him, or can let you harm him. I feel like that's something they're going to have to expound upon, because like the empty Anton Chigurh cattle killer gun harming him, or Eddie's inhaler harming him, etc. and down the line, that all implies that is in play here. That, a child's belief in what can harm or kill an entity like this can actually affect it. But how that plays with the physical form, I don't know.
I just kind of wrote this off as opening the garage door filled this with light, which is just, very basically protective and feels safer than being in a dark enclosed room. So possibly took their fear away, which caused Pennywise to retreat away from whether this was some sort of, a manifestation or some sort of projection, or actually like a physical part of him was here. Of it, I should say it. Like, yeah. The movie is called It. I don't know why I'm gendering the clown.
If we did titles, I would make the title of this "Don't Gender the Clown."
I wonder if that'll fit my Twitter name. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of what I took it as. A lot of this stuff, especially when the source material, like, when Stephen King tries to do rules-based, for lack of a better word, magic or supernatural behavior, when he goes for that, he often fails.
Yeah.
Like I look at this stuff like the book Firestarter and think like, oh man, dude, like it's the closest that Stephen King gets to like a Dean Koontz novel.
Yeah, and doesn't get tripped up.
When he tries to go like real rules-based, and it never really works out. So a lot of this stuff, especially in his let's say enhanced stage of his life, is very loosey-goosey, and it's just, whatever works for the scene. So.
The enhanced stage.
Yeah. But look, I mean, he's a recovering addict. You got to give him some credit.
Yeah. No, that is a very good euphemism. We need to talk about the damseling of Bev, because that is the thing that I think sticks out. All of us kind of groaned about it in the past. In order to accelerate the movie to an end, to get all of the kids together after their big manufactured break, they have to have it take Beverly after she brains her dad with a toilet tank cover, which angers me because for Bev as a character, that makes absolutely no fucking sense. And for this portrayal of Bev, specifically for how tough and resourceful she is like laid out to be, it makes less than zero sense.
It's extremely annoying. Brian and I were talking in a thread on the Slack just about how it's almost disappointing because it's just so totally expected.
Yeah,
like there were so many different ways they could have done this, and they just played it completely safe by the Hollywood rules, and it comes out as very boring. I don't know why. And to me, like you pull Stan into Pennywise's lair, right? Like you put Stan in the place of Beverly.
Yeah.
That would serve to get this group back together to go down into the sewers to save Stan. And it also sets up Stan's eventual suicide as he's an adult, because he would have seen more than these other children.
He would have seen the deadlights. He would have seen
the deadlights, and it would have been terrified to like have all of that dredged up 30 years later when you haven't thought of it a single time.
Mm-hmm.
That to me makes way more sense. And and Beverly is such a great character, even in this movie, like up until, and not even like, this doesn't take away her character. It's just boring Hollywood, like got to save the girl kind of stuff. And it's disappointing that when that kind of stuff happens more than anything. And especially with the weird wake you up with the kiss thing, like that's a little weird. Like I get it. Like, and it's a nod to like the thing that everybody talks about when it comes to the book. It, like, nobody talks about the 1,500 pages of like
amazing character work. Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone talks about the 5-page child orgy.
Did we mention that that's not in the movie?
We ought to. Like, if that's keeping anybody from going to see this, it's not there. Like, it is replaced in concept by Ben. You know, after they recover Beverly and she's kind of in her catatonic state, he kisses her to bring her back from the deadlights.
Which is weird, because in the book, I'm definitely not going to try to defend a child orgy. Let's say that first.
Right.
like there's do that.
There are explanations, but I think that there is no way to look at it that isn't uncomfortable.
Exactly, and the explanation of them giving up some of their innocence in order to protect themselves from it is something that actively works. And like, it's a sense of there's a sense of love there that Stephen King writes about it. And like, I think that alongside everything that these kids have gone through makes them like the quartet, right? Like, that's what pulls them together. And I did not want that in this movie at all. But I also didn't want like this weird non-consensual kiss thing. Like, Ben just plants on her.
Yeah.
and it's fine.
It's the power of love.
Not to cross
but they
promote
end
or
up
anything.
Together, right? Like, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, kind of. Like, we went through this exact same thing on the X-Men podcast, where Gambit does this and immediately says, you know, Gambit doesn't go where he doesn't belong. And like, yo, you just did. Like, I bet Ben would be like, I would never kiss a girl against her will. Like, yo, you just did.
That's awful.
Yeah. Brian, did you have more to say about Bev's damseling or the ensuing events?
No, Jeremy got my main point across, which is just like, they had so many options. And the biggest negative thing I can say about this film is, in the end, it is still a Hollywood horror film.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, for better or worse, that's what it is. But for that, it's a very good one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are table stakes, as they say in corporate America. That it's just going to come with the territory. It just feels. I mean, this sounds like super judgy, but hey, we're criticizing a thing. It's a super lazy move on their part. It's a shortcut to goad people into action, like when they should all be together and ready to kill this thing anyway because of the destruction that they have seen. You know, and that's what happens in the book. Like they decide, hey, it's time. Like, there's never going to be a better time to do this, so let's go do it. Yeah, the deadlights, that scares real cool. That is a really striking image when by his I mean its face unseams along the paint lines.
Yeah, that's a very disturbing. And anytime that this thing is opening its mouth, it really works for me. Like, these rows of teeth and this giant gaping maw with the floating lights on the inside is very, very good.
Yeah. And her eyes going completely gray. Very good. I'm curious to see what else they're going to do with the deadlights. I am particularly fond of the concept of the deadlights. Even if they are getting those wrong, it's supposed to be his true form that exists outside the wall of the universe. No big deal, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Mike gets to throw Henry down a well, which is fun.
Yeah, that's legit. Yeah, I'm into that.
I'm down for it.
This is Mike's story.
How
this
deep is
part
that
right
well?
here.
What'd you say, Jeremy?
I'm sorry, I talked over Brian. I was just asking how deep that well is, because it seems like he was screaming for a long time.
I mean, he's got to come back. Like, he is one of the main antagonists of the second part of this story.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Let's see here. The final confrontation. We should probably talk about this kind of as one whole thing. I have a note here that says eating Stan's head like an apple, which is how they find it and Stan. But Georgie's final plea. We talked about that scene being really good. It's really strange that they kill the clown by beating it up.
That is odd. I did wonder if that was how it happened in the book.
No.
It felt like that's the part where I was like, oh man, this just kind of feels like an 80s, like if this existed in the 80s, it would have inspired Stranger Things kind of thing.
Yep.
Right? Like, it is that weird recursive loop of that kind of thing. Because you can imagine after this, like, those kids are going to go on different adventures and meet aliens and go to haunted houses all the time.
Yeah.
The kid that plays Richie is going to be starring in the new Carmen Sandiego series, so
What?
maybe that's going to happen.
Yeah. His time in Derry hardened him. Yeah.
Carmen has no idea what's coming for that.
Ooh, she better run.
So something tells me that they're not going to go so cosmic with its origin.
They
they're going to
show it.
Yeah, I think they might like tone that down a little bit.
That'll be a huge loss.
Yeah, which is why I think the physical thing was sticking with me, because it felt like this film was really going for a much more physical creature.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that, even my mental interpretation didn't stack with.
Yeah.
But, that's what it is. They beat him up.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, since they're bringing the kids back, if they're going to show stuff that we didn't see in this particular part of the timeline. Like, if they're going to show, like, hey, we're finally remembering, like, when we did this, the sweat lodge and saw it landing on the meteor.
If they go back and like retroactively make what happened in the first movie worse in the second movie, that would be an interesting. Like, they remember it, but then like the closer they get to reconfronting it, the closer they get to actually remembering how it really happened. Mm-hmm. But I doubt they'd do that. But that would be an interesting way to pull it off.
It feels very conceptual.
I just want Bill to say, "Oh my God, I forgot. They'd actually kidnapped Stan. I thought it was Beverly." It's
like the credits.
Problem solved.
the credits roll, and then Bill wakes up as an adult, like, "Oh, what a strange dream." Yeah. Yeah.
How did you guys think about the floating bodies scene? Because it's such a literal interpretation of the metaphor. I don't remember this being in the book at all. Cole, maybe you can help me out if I'm wrong on that. Like, I don't remember this existing really in the books.
In the book, it's Lair when he is in the spider form, which is not his true form, but kind of an intermediate form. It's the physical form that he takes on this plane. All of the bodies are kind of rigged up in webbing. And so, and when he dies, all the bodies that are up there, including Audra, Bill's wife, the webbing slacks and they start descending from that. In the 1990s version, they are floating up, but they are still like webbed. And there's that here, there is no webbing at all. They are just kind of like floating in the sunlight under a grate.
Okay. Yeah. I thought this was a little weird. And it was a cool effect. Like, I liked this shot. Mm-hmm. I didn't know how it fit within this more than anything told me that they may actually go a little more cosmic with it. Like, they would go a little weirder with its origin. Mm-hmm. But who knows? I'm just curious to get your opinions on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It felt fine. Like, I liked it. It felt good for what the movie was.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, if a different version of this story, maybe it doesn't fit, but it felt like if I just came into this with no knowledge at all, that felt fine. It was weird and like shocking and just strange enough that it matched my vision of the movie, of the universe the movie was building.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, it just sticks out because it is so on the nose when that doesn't appear in the book. So, that I could see that complaint coming from people who are familiar with the previous treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Autumn and I shared a very quiet look in the theater of like, excuse me? What is that?
And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So literally, we all float down here. If you just go into this movie again for the masses, what does that mean by the end of the movie if you don't have that? It's just like this weird mantra. Mm-hmm. And they probably had a version of the script where they, felt like there had to be a kind of answer to that question if people were going to feel satisfied at the end of the movie. Mm. I feel like they had to justify an ending in a way that, like, you can't always guarantee there's going to be a second. Like, they had, a good feeling, but they still had to hedge their bets.
They still had to see, yeah.
And to be clear, like, I don't think the second one is actually green-lighted. Like, it's a no-brainer that it will be eventually, but it's not like it's a sure thing right now.
Right.
Deals are happening. It's going very fast. Yeah. It looks like if it doesn't happen, it would be insane.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with where all movies are at right now, not just horror movies in general. Yeah. That's a good question, Brian. I don't even know how to answer what they all float down here means even in the book. Aside from just when they are in the deadlights, they're incorporeal. But like that is pretty arcane, all things said. Yeah. Like,
well, we know from the Dark Tower series that Stephen King loves his mantras, right? Like, he loves repeating words. He loves repeating phrases. Most of his villains have, weird things that they say over and over again. Even like very small time villains, even the villains that live in his characters' heads have things. The Great Sage and Imminent Junkie comes to mind. Yep. That kind of thing. Like, it's just like repetition of things, and
let's pokerize them.
Yep, and it's just it becomes something that. Excuse me. It becomes something that is it becomes terrifying because of the repetition. It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah. Well, so, it takes on different shades of meaning depending on the context where it's invoked, right?
Yeah. But also, Brian, I like your point that, like, you have to, like, if people are coming into this movie and I just went to IMDb and searched it, and it came up like, you'll float down here. like if they're pushing that so much that at some point I'm sure somebody was like, hey, did we talk about the floating thing? Is the floating thing in the movie? Hey Bill,
hey Bill,
the floating thing in the movie?
Hey Bill, race more. Yeah. Lightest kids,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that and this is not meant to sound elitist at all, but something that somebody coming from the books and would probably notice way more than anybody just like coming in to watch a good scary horror movie.
Context and background, they're real.
Yep.
Yeah. I do want to make a note. Richie is the one who lands the first blow on Pennywise. And he has this whole monologue. It seems like he's going to turn on Bill, saying like, you made us, you made us walk here into danger, made us walk through shitty water. We've, risked our lives, blah, blah. And then on top of that, this final insult, now we're going to have to kill this fucking clown. That's incredibly cathartic.
Cheers in the audience when we were watching it. Like, people were like, woo, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't, I was being glib when I said that they killed it by beating it. Like, that is the action that we see, and it doesn't make any sense because this is an elder being. It is, literally a cosmic horror. Like, that would be out of a Lovecraft. They kill it by starving it of fear. Their act of, beating it down and all committing to this together is what, makes him shrivel. Like, quite literally at the end when he is, hanging from the wall of the well, he doesn't die by falling in. He like literally turns into ash, starting from his head on the way down. So like, that is a cool and good idea. I hope they expound on that.
Yeah, so, same. This takes place chronologically a little before this, but there's the scene where Bev is first down here. I touched on this earlier with the dance, but this is, I think, a great scene to illustrate Skarsgård's particular approach to playing it. He thinks of it as a performer, a person who really has a show to like, do in front of the audience. And there's a lot of fanfare build up to the dance. It's there's a little bit of music playing. It's going to come to the stage. Be ready. Here comes Pennywise, the dancing clown. And it is, I just love that scene.
So infernal.
Yeah. And his arms are moving or his limbs are all moving at like right angles. It's the strangest looking thing.
The camera is canting like it's doing this regular rotation, but his head is staying stationary in relation to the frame. So like the sense is that the entire world is kind of pivoting on his neck as a fulcrum, along with the rest of his body. Yeah, it's super affecting. It's like this weird like paper doll puppet kind of effect. Yeah, and then the movie ends with the promise. You know, them cutting their hands, which I cannot possibly imagine Eddie doing, but you know.
So could anyone here ever do a blood pact? Anyone ever want to? I'm assuming no across the board.
I think
yes and no. I just want to say I have done it. Don't ever want to do it. I'm horrified that I did it as a kid. So
I think we did a minor version where we used a needle to like prick our fingers, like our index fingers, and touch there. We didn't do what they do, which is really horrifying, taking a broken bottle from the open air sewer that is the Barrens, and then cut their whole palm open. Never did that.
Cool.
Not just one palm. Cut both palms because they all link arms in a circle. I thought they were going to do like the hand pile up thing in the middle of it, but no. I guess they cut both hands and like made the whole trust circle. Yeah, and made the promise.
If we're going to kill this clown again, we've got to be all in.
Cole, I'm honestly surprised you even went so far as to do the needle thing. I couldn't even bring myself to do the needle thing, and I don't know. There's something.
My neuroses came a lot later in life.
Okay, fair. Maybe I was just more neurotic as a child. I don't know, but there's something specifically about blood packs that really just grosses me out to my core. And specifically the way, like when they did the cuts, I imagined like a little cut because they don't show you the palms at first, and then they showed like I mean, I know it's not that bad, but it really just like the visual of it. I do not like cuts like that, I guess.
No.
A little while later, when Bill and Beverly are having their moment, and he runs over to kiss her, and she like puts her hand up against his face and just leaves the giant smear of blood all over it. I'm so glad that they did that.
You're so glad that they did that?
Yeah, I think it's hilarious. Like, I mean, like if you're gonna have that moment, like it's what would happen, right? Like Bill, at that point, I guarantee you, Bill would not care at all to get someone's blood on him, right? Because it's his first kiss. Like that's the only thing in the world that he's thinking about. Like he's definitely not thinking about the giant smear of blood on him.
No.
I always have a question when it comes to these blood packs, y'all, and maybe you can help me out here. But why do people insist when these things happen? And you see this, like it's a trope to get the inside of someone's palm, like. There's other places you could cut this that you don't use all the goddamn time. Like cut the back of your hand, cut your upper arms, push your upper arms together.
You need a reminder every day that you made a blood pack, Jeremy.
I guess so, or at least for like the next 6 to 8 weeks while it heals, and I can barely use my damn hands.
Well, that's why you use the opposite. Like you're right-handed, you do the left hand, so it's not like it only bothers you when you play guitar or something.
This is totally fine for me. Like I am totally all in when it comes to kids making blood packs. Like this is a very kid thing to do. Like this is a very ensemble kid thing, and I am into that.
And it'll pay off in chapter 2 when their wounds come back.
Yeah.
So did you guys have any other scenes that I didn't account for in this kind of inventory that I took of cool things that you would kick yourselves if you didn't talk about?
Well, real quick, at the end of the movie, it says "It Chapter 1."
Yes,
which you don't know going in. Like it just calls itself "It."
That's smart.
It's smart to put it at the end of the movie, but it's also hopeful and very boastful, and it's like taunting the gods. So just saying.
Yeah, I didn't applaud because I think applauding at the credits is kind of tacky, but I did do one of these
there to hear it. Yeah, who are you applauding?
I did do like a one hit.
Well, that's an excitement clap. But that's not like oh, praise you, great movie.
Right. Like, it wasn't a standing O. Yeah. Jeremy, did you have any other stuff that you wanted to hit?
I want to bring up 2 small things. One, very early in the movie, Ben is in the library when right before he has this scare scene, and he's researching the history of dairy. And there's a scene where the librarian comes over and is like, "Oh, hey, here's this book that you were looking for." And he's like, "Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate that." And she says, "Shouldn't you be outside, young man?" And I'm like, what fucking librarian in the world is going to see a kid and be like, "You need to get out of here"? You don't need to have your head in a book. Like, who is
she hates her job. Everyone get out of the library and let me be.
Let me smoke. Let me smoke in here.
You ever work retail and you're just like, fuck, another customer.
Uh-huh. I don't care if you pay my salary. Come on.
The other thing is, this goes back to something with Beverly's character, and I guess you could put this under the umbrella of her being damseled. But at the end of after the blood pact, all of the kids one by one get up and leave, and it's very obvious that like this is probably the last time these kids are going to hang out. Like this is the beginning of a summer. This is towards the end of a summer. Like they're going to go to school. Like things are going to change. Like you kind of feel that even if the movie doesn't spell it out for you.
Yeah, and like Beverly is specifically talking about like moving to Portland. Moving to Portland. Yeah.
The last three that are there are Ben, Bill, and Beverly. And obviously this is the love triangle, right? Mm-hmm. Because earlier we've seen Ben write her the January Embers poem. We saw her go to Bill with it and say and try to repeat it back to him. And Bill is totally clueless. He's like, I don't know any poetry. I'm sorry. I can barely get a word without stuttering. So like I'm not your poetry boy. And she eventually puts that together, I think, with Ben when he kisses her awake. So it was kind of a bummer for me, even though I think that like the actor and the actresses wouldn't like look right together. Like she just looks much older than Ben, but it was kind of a bummer for me that the last scene we get is Bill and Beverly. Like it just didn't feel earned at all. Like Ben is the one that brought her out of the thing. He's the one that wrote the poem. Bill is obviously the leader of this group, but it's mostly just by default because he lost the most to this monster. He lost his little brother to it. And like that, but that's it.
Yeah. And it's kind of a shitty thing to do to Ben.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just kind of a
but also if it's what she but if it's what she wants too, like there's not that big a can't take away what she wants either. She doesn't like Ben at that point.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not trying to be like you deserve Ben
deserves
you or whatever. Yeah, Ben, go get a piano and play it in front of your apartment for the next 24 hours. Like don't stop until she says yes or whatever. Really Ben, gonna date this podcast.
Ben, be really really happy that Reddit doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, you're not even gonna know what a red pill is for like 20 years, dog. You're good.
I mean, for 10 years. I mean, the Matrix
10 years.
Is gonna...
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, those are the two things that I wanted to bring up. I really like that scene where she her and Bill are, I think they're cleaning the bathroom from all the blood, and she recites the poem and he's like just totally clueless. Like that really worked for me, and to have the payoff of that be like, oh yeah, she still totally likes him. Maybe that's just me, like as the guy who as a kid never got the girl, right? Like I can't really say that now 13 years of marriage in, but as a kid that maybe that was like 13-year-old Jay, like, come on, man, I'm the one that wrote the fucking poem that you like. What the hell?
Right.
Anyway, I'm probably sounding bad at this point, so I'm gonna
no,
stop.
you're not sounding bad. Like it's fraught. And who knows what direction they're going to take it. Because like in the 1990 version, she ends up with Ben. Like, she I forget if she sleeps with him. God, I just watched this like last night, so I should know. But they end up like leaving together and getting married. That may be how it happens in the book, but like Beverly and Bill sleep together in the book. When they're when they're adults. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think they left it intentionally messy for that exact reason.
Yeah.
I'll trust them with it.
Yeah,
for now.
Just so many. Man, I want to see more of this. It's so rare that you look at something and see like, oh, a sequel is definitely warranted and necessary. Yeah, I want them to fill out the themes. I want them to like complete this, because the things that I miss are probably the things that I miss either exist in the adult side of the story or exist as part of a contrast between the two of them. I feel kind of bad because we focused a lot on the spectacle of the movie and the story, specifically the different scares and cool scenes and stuff. There are so many great moments, like the one that Jeremy alluded to with them in the bathroom, talking about the poem and Bill being clueless about it the entire time. Just each
or
of
the
these...
real shitty girl at the pharmacy who tells Stan that tells Eddie like all of his stuff is fake.
Yeah.
And then the cast, Eddie's cast.
Changes loser to lover. It's so good. It's great. It's kind of cheesy, but it's a real striking kind of thing. I like it a lot.
Well, there's that real slow. There's that scene where she's filling it in, and you're just watching her stare at him while she's chewing at gum, occasionally glancing down at his cast, and it's really, it's really intimidating in that way. Child bullies are intimidating.
Yep, especially somebody in a position of authority on the other side of the counter. Yeah, it's but there are so many great little moments and interactions and stuff in this. Like I was so happy that this movie turned out to be good. Like they, who can say if they nailed it? Like they had to make choices. Any adaptation of something this big is going to be a compromised product. But like I don't know, I this movie has stuck with me, since I saw it, and I think it's going to stick with me for a while. Like, and it has cemented it, as a story, as just one of these just massive and important works in horror for me, even if it doesn't always succeed in being strictly scary, either in its original form or in either of the adaptations. Like any final thoughts on you guys? Brian, I'll throw to you first.
Yeah, I definitely think this movie has cemented it as transcending just being a book. It is now a character that exists within just everybody's minds, which is great, because like this is the character deserved to have a version of him that served the purpose of being for the masses. It's a great character. It always has been a great character. So yeah, there are compromises in the story, but for what it is, there are a lot of things it does very well, and I think the good far outweighs any negative thing you can say about it.
Yeah. Jeremy?
I am so thankful that this movie didn't fall into the trap that The Dark Tower did and try to start the Stephen King cinematic universe. And it knew its boundaries from the beginning. Like it's very telling that this movie is 2.5 hours long, or around that. And then,
I mean, minus credits is like 2 and 5.
Okay, yeah, so right at 2 hours. And stayed within its lane, right? Like we didn't even get half the story. But yet The Dark Tower spent 5 minutes like with an extended clown reference. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just really nice that this movie knew exactly what it was going to do and set out to do it very competently. And any of my negative, and I'm always worried that I speak too much about the negative because it's easy to do that to a certain degree. But it's like all of my issues with Mike or Ben or Beverly or what have you, like are very, very tiny compared to how much enjoyment I got out of just watching it. Again, Brian made this point earlier, but like not a super scary movie. Like I'm not going to turn off all the lights and, oh shit, I'm so terrified. I can't even leave my house. I mean, like it's not that kind of movie for me, but it's extremely entertaining. And like, I think feeling that the kids are terrified and feeling like this is all relatively probable within the rules of the universe that it sets out and creates is something special. And it is a really big book for me, not just literally, but it was a big formative book for me as a kid. Like a lot of Stephen King was, for better or for worse. So I'm glad to see it get this adaptation that's so good, because it could have come out so bad, y'all. This could have been, as me and Cole know from the Dark Tower movie, it could have been so bad.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm so happy that you guys came on here to talk about this. It is so good to talk about something that is great. We saw that last time on The Mist when Gary and I talked about that. We saw the opposite of it in the Dark Tower, in the Dark Tower movie. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun here tonight. I encourage, if you haven't seen the movie and you're listening to this and you were looking for more of a summary, like, sorry, take this as, an admonition. Go see this movie. You're not going to be bummed out by it. I think that there's going to be a lot of good stuff. And hey, it doesn't have the kid orgy, so it has that going for it.
Yeah, you can safely say that no kids were orgied in the making of this movie.
Oh, also, if you haven't seen it, which I don't know why I'm talking to this hypothetical person. There's nothing after the credits, so don't stick around.
I appreciate you mentioned that in the Slack channel, and I just want to give you a high five for that, because I was able to run out and empty my bladder because it had been 2 hours, and I'm an old man, and I was like, oh crap.
I'm just going to be the guy on the podcast who says those scenes are awful. Why would you do that to anybody? Credits mean the end of the movie. Let me go home.
Yep.
Yes,
I agree.
Especially the one after, like, the second post credits, like the post credit sequence. Like, what are you doing? Please stop this.
Yeah. You've gone mad with power. So Brian, where can people find you on the internet?
Mostly on the Duckfeed Slack. Just go to the Patreon and pay enough money per month to get access to the Slack and hang out with me. It's great.
Yeah, you're in there as Dr. Static, and you are one of our mods. So thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Jeremy, how about you?
I host like 17,000 podcasts, which is 4 less than Cole hosts. But if you liked hearing me talk about horror stuff, I do a loosely horror-based podcast based on the TV show Supernatural, where we talk about werewolves and hunks. And as I was IMDb diving for this movie, learned that the kid that plays Richie was actually appeared on an episode in season 11 of Supernatural. So I'm looking forward to that. That's called Monster of the Week. You can find it at monsteroftheweek.cool. You can find me on Twitter at JG Greer if you want to chat about anything Stephen King related. I'm always down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Jeremy won't plug it, but you recently launched a Patreon for your Monster of the Week podcast. No, like it's there. I got to do a thing. Yeah, if you want to support him and his work, it is patreon.com/monster of the week.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. I really appreciate that.
It's great to see you guys are hitting goals and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah. We're about to start covering comic books. Brian, do you want to read some comic books about hunks? Did you know that they were?
Jeremy? Okay. Let's do this. I signed up for the Dark Tower comic books. I'll do the same for Supernatural.
Yeah.
You're getting my comic book critic side, so I hope you're ready.
Neat. I don't know if those Dark Tower comics will hold up to it, but it'll be fun. So
I know we're trying to get out of here, but I just found a bunch of those the other day. I was moving some stuff around as I'm rebuilding my office, and I found a small paper bag full of loose floppies, and like half of them are Dark Tower comics that I have no memory of buying whatsoever. So,
nice. Yeah.
Hey. So if you want those, let me know, because I certainly don't want them in my house anymore.
I've got my trade paperbacks. It's fun. Cool. And we'll be back next time with our opening coverage of The Stand. We're doing 2 episodes on that. I believe the cutoff point is chapter 48. Yes. I know it's ridiculous. I'm listening to the audiobook on 2x speed, which I never ever do. It's not going to be a beat by beat thing, because why the fuck would we? It'll be kind of similar to this, actually, talking about individual characters and their arcs up to a point, and then in the second episode focusing on kind of the climax and falling action of the book. But it'll be 2 episodes because it is so big, and then after that we are going to begin our coverage of Wizard and Glass. I'm so excited. It's such a fun book. It'll be fun. So until you can find me on Twitter at Cole Ross, KoleRoss, and on other shows at Duckfeed.tv. If you want to support this show, go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. If you've done that already, I appreciate it. If you haven't, there's some cool stuff there, and I would love if you checked it out. So until next time, long days and pleasant nights.